Hey everybody, welcome to our chat. I'm live here with Conrad Audette, the narrator extraordinaire who did The Dragon and the Whites and is currently working on Washington's Dragon Hunter. And he is hailing from the Deej Time group, which does therapeutic role-playing games. And as you know, I am Tim Baird, a fantasy and science fiction author. I have The Dragon and the White series out and recently published Eggs in Two Baskets over the summer of 2020. And I'm currently working on a children's book and a middle grade book, which will be out sometime next year probably. Conrad has been doing a lot of great games. You can follow them each time on YouTube and Facebook. And Conrad, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to lately?
Hey everyone, yes, I'm Conrad. I am known over at Deej Time as the resident psychology expert as well as resident Deej master, which we use as a replacement for game master, as I primarily run all of the games. But essentially, we try to get people into role-playing games just because we believe playing them is inherently therapeutic, but then to take a closer look, place that lens where one may be better for anxiety, one may be better for depression, and to hone in a little bit more on those and to even go as far as maybe getting into using them in an actual therapy setting. So that's a little bit about that and what we've been doing.
Yeah, no, it's really great. I know as your fans are probably seeing, you have the Tiny Frontier series coming out right now. This is February of 2021 as we're talking about this, and it was great. You know, we sat down and I dressed up in my armor and, closed the door to the office and basically disappeared into a, kind of a fun little land for a little while. And, you forget about what's going on out in the world. You can relax, de-stress. It just helps clear your mind and, let you have a little fun for a little bit. And then, you can go back to paying your bills and doing your work later. But yeah, there's definitely a great bit of relief that I get from doing fantasy type things. We both play Magic the Gathering together and play different video games. And, sometimes you just need to kind of disconnect from the real world for a little bit and have some, just some fun. So yeah, I love everything that you guys are doing, and I think it's really great. But today we're here about book narration for audiobooks. As people know, you were the narrator on the Dragon and the Whites, book 1 of my series, and you're currently halfway through Washington's Dragon Hunter. So tell me about kind of where you stand on that book, how it's going for you, and when do you think people will be able to hear it?
Yeah, so it's progressing. I have had a few personal delays from, as everybody has had with the world.
Yeah, it's been a year.
It's been a year. Every day is a year, but time is flying. It's kind of in that weird nebulous. But yeah, I guess like so the process is like when I sit down to narrate, I look through whatever the chapter is going to be, like review it, so that something that will happen if you don't review it is you'll set a certain tone somewhere that then a page later doesn't make any sense. Like it was like, oh, the person was, it was a joke the whole time that the person knew, but you in the process of narrating it didn't know yet. So important to reveal these things is it alters the tone. So review the book and then go through and do every line. Like most lines have at least 3 takes because you want to capture it the right way. I listen to audiobooks where it just sounds like they talk through, and I'm sure they do because they're much more experienced than I am, and they just know right from the start, like, I'm going to read it the whole way this time. But that's every character, I like something that I do that I notice that others don't necessarily do is like my tone of voice and just slight like changes in pitch and even like slight accents to distinguish the characters, as opposed to kind of just saying all the words with your native speaking voice. So, that too like causes a bunch of retakes in. But anyway, once you get to the point where you actually like all of them and you go back and edit through, and the quality of audio for ACX, which is what puts out all of these, is specific. You need to be between like -60 and -3 decibels, which to us is indistinguishable once you get to like a certain floor, but like that needs to be a range, and there are all these other things that go into it. So balancing all of that, takes time. So anyway, that's why like there are delays with audio recordings and whatnot. But I'm hoping that it'll be out in the next few months.
Oh, very cool.
Get back on track. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I will point out, you're talking about how you record it different ways. One of the things I love about when we work through the reviewing and editing together is when you'll record something and you'll do 2 or 3 sentences in a row and basically give me options to choose from, because there's pros and cons to every approach. And I wrote the words, so in my mind they sounded one way, but you're now producing it and it's going to sound one way in your perspective. So it's kind of neat finding that good collaboration between our two perspectives. And I want it to be your performance, but I still want it to match the feelings that I had while writing it. So I love having that selection of you trying it different ways. And that's one of the things I always thought was great, was you have a lot of variability and you're willing to kind of experiment and know that if you record something 3 or 4 times in a row, 3 of them are not going to be as good as the one we select, but it doesn't mean that they were necessarily bad. They just didn't match up to like our goals for that particular scene. So no, I think it's good to kind of stretch your muscles a little bit and kind of get out there and have a good time with it. So no, I'm glad to hear that it's going to be coming out soon, because I look forward to obviously listening to the completed work myself. And I know I already have a few people asking when the follow-ups come in, because I have, like myself included, I do more audiobooks nowadays than I do physical paper books, just because of my work schedule and commuting. I have an hour trip round way each day, and I can dock down a average audiobook in like 10 business days. So yeah, I love working through audiobooks. So yeah, we already got some people who love the Dragon and the Whites, now waiting for your performance of Washington's Dragon Hunter. So once we get that up on Audible, we'll let everybody know. All right, so I have some kind of prepared questions, kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit. So let's dive in. Between doing the Dragon and the Whites and the performance you've done now for Washington's Dragon Hunter that people, as of the time of this recording, haven't been able to hear yet, what was your favorite scene? And if it is from Washington's Dragon Hunter, try to keep it spoiler free. But was there like one scene that you really liked, or a certain voice that you enjoy doing more than others, that kind of really stuck in your head?
So any scene that features the dragon work is, I love doing it, and I do those a bunch of times, and those require like the most effort. It's like you have to get the voice nice and deep, and just keep going down. And I don't know if this mic actually could pick up my voice there, but and like the growls and stuff, and giving all this power to it. So like the first true like voice actor that like inspired me was James Earl Jones. And of course, like he has this iconic, super like deep voice that is both for me, like early in life, he's both Darth Vader and Mufasa. And both are these just iconic characters for me. It's like my laptop background right now is Darth Vader. So anytime I get to make a voice that's powerful is awesome.
Yeah,
as far as the scene goes, I really loved it's so sad, but I really enjoy doing the wolf fight between the wolves, the bears. But the scene where that ends Brynjar's life, it was because it was emotional for me to read. I also like wanted to portray the same emotional impact in voicing it, because that's kind of the driving force. Like I want to give life to text. And so something that was so powerful to me, I wanted to also make it that powerful. So I spent like more time give, at least in my mind, like maybe there like wasn't that big of a difference to the listener, but like to me it's like, yeah, like that was good, and I felt like really happy and proud of it. So I'd say that was my favorite scene there. And like my favorite line with Trigby, you know, is he's like, "They must pay," and he like shouts at them. That was a lot of fun. I did that like 50 times. In Washington, how did it not spoil though? I mean, I guess it can cut this too, but if need be. So, you know, the general returns. I don't know if that's like is something that's kind of secret, or if I should be like saying that he comes back.
You mean when the dragon returns, or the Colonel?
The Colonel, yeah, the Colonel. So
So
I just mean that the fact that he like returns for the sequel, period.
At the end of the first book, I think everybody knows because they end it with, and I'll try to keep this spoiler free too, but we know that the Colonel was in the helicopter at the end looking down at the mound in the side of, you know, Tuckerman's Ravine, but we don't know that anything bad is going to happen yet.
Right.
So yeah, you talking about the Colonel is completely okay.
Okay, all right. So I like what happens at that point, right? It's like we don't know what's going to happen with that, or you know, but he comes back, and I love there's a again spoilers. He has people under him, and he enters a room, and the tone of the room, the way like people address him and the way he addresses them, and building the tension. There's like a specific type of tension that needs to be built where things are said one way but they're meant another. And I just like doing his voice because it's like that kind of sinister, like little bit of twang, like, "What are you doing here?" You know?
Yeah, I always picture him as like an angry man from Texas who
Yeah.
is just running around looking for dragons.
Yeah, and that's how I pictured him. So that's great. So yeah, and I enjoy doing those types of scenes with him, where he gets to interact. Like, of course, like his own like introspection is cool, but like it's really when he gets to interact with other people, because like he is like such a powerful military guy who he continues to do shady things. You say like,
yeah, he has no oversight. He has a near endless budget. He's just running around in secret facilities. You know, he's kind of living that like, you know, villainous dream.
Yes,
He's got to do whatever he wants.
Yeah. So yeah, anytime he gets to interact with the plebeians, who are all beneath him in terms of his own view and powers, is just a lot of fun. And it's cool because he was shady in the first one, we know that, but like I feel like you didn't quite grasp the depth of how shady this guy is until the sequel. So yeah, the scene that in particular, like I feel like it's gonna spoil too much, so I don't.
Well, you're gonna like recording book 3 because he gets shadier
Yeah.
as they go through Dragon Liberator. So yeah, you're gonna enjoy it.
Nice.
Very cool.
That's excellent.
So I've had you narrate primarily science fiction themed fantasy, and you've done mostly fantasy slash like futuristic stuff with your games. Um, from what you've done, or maybe what you wish you were doing, what is your favorite genre to narrate and why?
So definitely like high fantasy, because the I feel like my voice caters more towards those types of characters, just like my
Mhm.
natural voice. You know, orcs and goblins and you know, old wizards, and even like more on like the heroic side, like if need be, it's like, and my mighty axe, you know, like I can be as ridiculous as need be, but that type
Yeah.
of thing still, you know, in like the high fantasy setting, I feel like is a good match for my voice.
Hmm.
And again, I kind of got said about like the feelings of power, you know, like a truly intimidating character, you know, and if it's in kind of like a low fantasy or like modern day, then they're probably just a jerk, right? You know, like a role in the room like that. It's like, like no one likes this guy. But like in fantasy, it's like, oh well, I might not like him, but I view him with, you know, all this gravitas. So so yeah, I'd say like that is like what I enjoy doing the most.
Hmm. All right, cool. What got you into narrating in the first place?
So I've always liked doing impressions
Hmm.
and voices, you know, from time immemorial. You know, like I think it probably started with Beauty and the Beast, actually. Like of course, like I said, liked Mufasa and Darth Vader, but the Beast has a like a higher pitched voice, so it was closer. And you know, and then with like Gaston too, and it was always like I was really hyper masculine when I was like 10 years old, you know, like machismo and everything. So saying like Gaston lines are always the best. And that continued for a while too. And I still now like think it's funny, you know, like his opening line when he greets Belle, it's just like, how can you read this? There's no pictures. You know,
With
and
your lady brain.
yeah. Uh and then like the Beast, like one of my favorite parts is when he's banging on the door. It's like, you will join me for dinner. That's not a request. And you know, getting it in that. But then you know, like cartoons and stuff, because it's just a way of showing fandom. It's just you know, mimicry is the greatest form of flattery. And you know, with like SpongeBob, like playing like Patrick, like, oh, I've caught the ugly, and making stuff like that, like Mr. Krabs, like money, you know, and whatever. And those, I'm not saying those are good, but I like imitating them. Uh, and so then, like in high school, I got into singing and more with like actual like voice modulation and proper breathing and all of that. And I loved singing and was in, you know, a few choirs and whatnot. Fast forward again, I kind of through, you know, I won't get into it really, but you know, through illness, I lost kind of the athlete part of myself, and like working out's really just not a thing for me anymore. So I look to, you know, my voice, because like I still have that, and something that I can do in my free time. And so I was just about to start Deeds and Dragons, the show, when another kind of, you know, a serious thing happened with my family, and the show had to be put on hold. But I still liked I wanted to get into like the nature of it, like this. I still wanted to bring stories to life. They just weren't mine. You know, like I like bring someone else's story to life just seemed more palpable, and it was something I could do on my own. I wouldn't have to be with like another group, or coincide with time and whatnot with others. So I started getting into it, and I've just had a lot of fun. I really love the idea of storytelling, because it's like one of our oldest and most important aspects of being human, right? It's like how before we could write, everything was passed on through orally, and sometimes those things became embellished, and sometimes those things turned into Gilgamesh. And so I think that storytelling is just a super important part of human life. Regardless of what the story is, there's something to be said about the human condition, and so being able to bring life to words or to animation in some way, like to give life to something with my voice, is something that's super cool, and something I think is just important for people.
That's cool. Yeah, it's funny you bring up the Gaston, because my dad, I don't know if you met him at the wedding or if you've met him before, but he's an avid hunter here in the Northeast. So he's always, shooting deer and bear and stuff like that. So I grew up basically in Gaston's house. And I've told my son before that the song is about my dad. So whenever we watch Beauty and the Beast, and they're talking about eating, a dozen eggs and stuff like that, and he's the size of a barn, my son's actually now to the point where he's like, "Oh, Dad, it's Pop's song," and I'm like, "That's awesome."
That's amazing. What an amazing theme song to have too.
Yeah. So if you could narrate or perform any novel, what would it be? Like, obviously, I know your dreams were to narrate my books, but if there were not my books, what's a book out there that you've read that you wish that you could have been the narrator for?
To say that's kind of what makes this so hard, because I'm already narrating those books.
Like, I'm already living my dream.
So in kind of like in recent history, I'd say like the Witcher series.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm actually doing the first book right now on Audible.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's probably much better than what I would be doing. I was told that the person, or at least a rendition of it, the person sounds like Geralt in the video games.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, it doesn't say who the narrator is. I suppose I could pull it up. But yeah, he does. So this audiobook, I think, is pretty old at this point. So basically, whoever cast it, I don't know if it's just a coincidence or if they listen to the audiobooks and they're like, "That's the voice that we want." It sounds just like Geralt, because I never played the games. I've never read the books, but I did watch either the only season or I watched season 1, and instantly fell in love with it. So that's why once I got through my current queue of audiobooks, I had to dive right into it. So, and I think there's like 8 books. So I basically know what I'm doing for the next 7 books. I'm just going to burn right through the series and listen to them all.
It's so great. So The Witcher to me, Geralt is a Witcher, but like Witchers in general to me are super cool. And if I were to magically transport into a high fantasy setting and then have any sort of like existing archetype or something, like I'd be a Witcher. It's like their super senses and like their ability to like use like all sorts of potions and poisons that are lethal to literally everybody else, but they enhance themselves that way, and just enough magic, like just a touch of magic through the quick hand signs, and then it touches on all sorts of great folklore that exists, like the twist that he puts on all sorts of classic tales, and brings them into the world. Like he just does such a great job with it. And some, folk tales that I wasn't already familiar with, like the way with certain like curses and whatnot come more from like Scandinavian stuff, which like I'm much more familiar with like Celtic and like English folklore. But the blend is so great. And so to, again, just like to give life to that world in my own way would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I really love what I've consumed so far, because those books are written the way I kind of like to write, where you have a very strong connection to reality, but then you add your fantasy to it. So then it seems believable as you're reading it. So, I mean, 80% of what happens in The Witcher, you can totally picture happening in like 13th century England or something like that. You know, everybody's riding around on horses and carts, and, you know, they live in these, you know, hovels and stuff like that. And then, oh, by the way, he's also fighting this like werewolf or something like that, you know. It's just kind of like slipped right in there so that you're in this world that feels real, but then like you get hit with, oh, it's also a fantasy story. No, so that's a great choice. That's a good answer. Probably easy to answer, but what is your favorite genre to read? Maybe this will throw you for a twist.
I was gonna say, I am going to throw you for a twist. So actually my favorite genre to read, it's so nerdy, but it's actually like educational. Like what I like get really engrossed in now is like, if it's, I guess it borders on sci-fi because it's all theoretical, but like I will get lost just reading like all these like different postulations on like time travel and like multiverse theory and whatnot, and trying to make sense of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I guess it is like, again, like I said, like, because it's all theory, you know, like we don't have any way to like truly demonstrate like that. Some of them say like, based on my math here, like this is how it works, or based on this math, this is how it works. Like I just was reading one where all time is a matter of distance. Like it all exists within our universe. It's just a matter of going there. It's not like actually speeding through any sort of like vortex or like through portals or whatnot. It's just, you just got to go far enough to get there. So you can't impact the events based on your ability to travel there and whatnot. So, you know, like I get really into all of that, and I get really into philosophy and like what that means too. So I guess just anything that is helping me understand myself and the world. You know, like one of my favorite authors is actually C.G. Jung, who is a psychoanalyst from Switzerland that you may have heard of. So psychoanalysts like Freud, they met like once, I'm pretty sure, had like a nice conversation, but he wrote all sorts of great stuff about like archetypes, like the hero archetype and like the mother archetype. And then, but learning about all of that and then looking at fantasy and like what it means to be a hero. And then you start to see like parallels and start to see these links based on my reading of that. So I like love reading like the meta read, you know, like I like to read about kind of like everything, and then I like to see the threads. So I know it's like such a nerdy answer. I mean, like the bulk of my reading right now actually is learning like all the games that we play. Mm-hmm. So like Early Dark, see, I have it right here. So, you know, this is see how thick it is. It's like a textbook. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, so this was one of the games that we just recently played. And it's a game, you know, but it reads like a textbook. It's written by an anthropologist, and it's like all this cultural stuff. But anyway, so that's the bulk of my reading at the moment. It's studies and these game stuff.
Yeah. No, at least where you started, I was kind of on the same page, because I've done a lot of Stephen Hawking's and Neil deGrasse Tyson's books. And, you know, I did enough basic physics for my mechanical engineering degree, but I never really delved into quantum mechanics or anything regarding space travel from a faster than light perspective. And I understand enough of it. I almost feel like I'm a little kid at a magic show where, like, it's real life. I don't fully understand it, and the stuff I don't understand just amazes me, and it's so neat. And have you read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, Christopher Paolini's newest book? He's the one that wrote Aragon years ago. He did his first sci-fi book. But one thing I loved is he wanted to have it be rooted in reality. So he didn't want to like warp physics to make his ideas come to life. So one thing he proposed was they have a faster than light drive, because of course you need to have one if you're going to be in space in the future. So they come up with this scheme where if you can travel faster than light and you see things by light at the speed of light, and you want to find out something that happens in the future, you jump in a certain direction faster than the speed of light, you get out to a certain distance, and then you watch the light from the place that you're trying to figure out what happens come to you, so that you can see what happens in the future, quote unquote, by looking at it from a telescope at another point in time. And I know I'm like botching the description of it, but it was so cool because assuming that you can travel faster than light, that methodology would technically work, because then you'd be watching something from the past, quote unquote, come to you. You could see it through a telescope and then jump back to that place faster than light to get there before it happened. And, as he's describing it in the book, I'm like, this is so messed up. But if we can actually travel faster than the speed of light, that's theoretically a thing that you could do. So it's almost like it's a real way to do like telling the future. And it was just very, very neat.
That is an incredibly cool way to go about it.
Yeah, because I mean, it has nothing to do with magic. It has nothing to do with, fantasy. It's just how physics works, assuming that you can bend one rule of physics. So, assuming that we can have FTL drives, someday we could maybe get to that point. So what is your favorite book of all time? I'm sure you probably have like 10 that are equal, because I know I have a bunch that are all kind of on the same par.
Yeah, so let me just hit on 3. So in terms of like the standard, aside from your series, because that's where I was going with the 3.
Obviously, yeah.
3.
I'll let you can claim 4.
You can claim 4.
So that you can say that my 3 are 2, 3, and 4. Well, what's the one that's right above it?
So the only books that I ever like pre-ordered and picked up the same day that they launched were Harry Potter books. Mm-hmm. I won't talk about them. We
can talk about this at another time. I was gonna say I'm totally cool we can have a whole series of where we just talk about Harry Potter. So mark your calendars. Yeah, this is coming up.
Yeah. My outrage about the comparison between the 6th one and the 6th film. Then I'll call that like the fantasy one, like the sci-fi one. Definitely the Rise of Vader. That it's like Legend, Dark Lord, Rise of Vader, something like that. Yeah. And it takes place like right after episode 3 would, where he is still unknown to the rest of the universe, but he's going around doing the Emperor's work. So, there's some surviving Jedi that have no clue who he is. I like this unforgettable scene where, they've managed to overcome a number of challenges up to this point, though, full of fear and barely. And they get to the point where they see him, and just like his mere presence, they're like crushed by it. Like this like incredible dark side force presence is overwhelming, and everything about him was like described that way. And so like we can't even fight this guy just by like his feel. But they have no choice. So somebody does, and every lightsaber strike is too much to handle. Like the strength behind them, they're like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, so the guy manages to like deflect, 5 5 swings, and he's like, my forearms are like shaking, and they start running, and they get an energy shield closing behind them, and he just throws his lightsaber at them, and they're like, oh no, and they go to use the force to stop it, and their force powers do nothing. Like they can do absolutely nothing compared to his force power of the throw of the saber, and it just comes, and one of their legs is gone. and like I read this, like the book I think came out in like 2006, and I like remember the scenes. Like,
that's what I was wondering. I was gonna say, because I have almost every pre-Disney Star Wars book on the shelf behind me, and I'm wondering if I have. No, I don't see the Rise of Vader up there, so maybe I don't have it. That's kind of embarrassing. So you think I would have that if it came out at that time period?
Yes.
I'll have to look into this, because that sounds interesting. That's a book I would read.
Yeah, and so then I guess my other one that's really like stuck with me for a very long time, and I reread in gaining understanding of things, is Grendel.
Oh, that's a good book. Yeah.
And again, it's kind of like what I was saying about, like I like the educational, like meta stuff, and it's like all of Grendel's perspective, and the like story itself, like we all know, or at least, generally, like the story of Beowulf, people have heard of it, and Grendel's side of it, and his, the way he approaches going about being a monster, and then all these great ties to philosophy and nihilism, and how function predates existence, like and all of these arguments that, like, the first time I read it, like I was barely grasping any of it, and then I like returned to it years later, like this is truly great how this came out, and like the descriptions and the reflection of these ideas are pretty profound for being, reminded me of like Chronicles of Narnia, where there are like all of these other themes. Like the story itself is cool and people know it, but when you look at like beneath the surface at like all the things that they're like trying to say and represent, there's really a lot there. So yeah, I'd say that those have been like the most impactful books, I'll say, like over the years for me.
Yeah. Yeah, we did Grendel junior year of high school, and I just remember falling in love with it, because you have this, bad guy who in Beowulf was killing everybody and dismembering them and eating people, and then you suddenly see that, like, he's got like feelings and emotions, and then his mother comes into play and all that, and you're like, oh wow, like you get to the end and you like feel bad for him. You're like, wow, this guy's going through like a lot. like, can't you just like give him a couple? There's got to be people in your meat hall that you don't like. Like, give him one of them. There's that jerk down the hall that keeps eating all your snacks or something. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, mine are both sci-fi. Mine is probably number one is Old Man's War by John Scalzi. I have the whole Old Man's War series up there, and I reread that probably once every 2 years or so. And then Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I just did Ready Player Two a month or two ago after it came out in the fall. And I love the nostalgia behind it, and just living in that world where you kind of have like anything that you want. And it's just really cool. But yeah, basically that's what I love about fantasy and sci-fi is, if you can dream it, you can write it. And, that's one of the great things with the two genres. What do you like better? Book narration that you can do on your own at your own pace, or recording live games of people, kind of on the fly with less preparation?
Oh, the amount of preparation that goes into my live plays is actually great. But I'd say they definitely you know, have their pros and cons. Like I like in my blood, like love like the tabletop role playing game. The way that my life has evolved, I also value my own pace and not having to worry about the needs of others while attempting to do things. And it's like that in itself is like relieving, because like that's like a huge anxiety provoking thing for me with just like the way, you know, the state of my illness, that I constantly worry about interruption and having moments where you can't get up, and it's like always there. It's a perpetual fear, and I won't go beyond that because we're talking about something else. But to do like the live games and stuff, like it's just like a different feeling, like you know, as opposed to bringing someone else's story, giving that life, you know, you have kind of like or for me, like a paternal feeling to that, you know. I'm like, I want to like nurture the text to life. And then for the other side, it's like a group thing where, you know, and I hope that you got this out of it, but like you were a great player to have on the show because you were,
thanks.
You know, clever and but also funny, and that's always the optimal player. Is like they can figure stuff out, but they can also bring humor to the scene, and I always appreciate that. And you meshed well with our players, so
well, especially Tony. I think Tony and I played a lot off each other.
Yeah.
You know, that was my first one I've done with you guys, so I was trying to figure out like where my place was in the hierarchy. I know there's a few times where I sort of just kicked the door in and said like, this is what I'm going to go do. I don't really care what the rest of you are doing on the ship. I'm going to go find that dog and I'm going to figure out how to investigate it. And everybody else just sort of like let me go and do it. And I felt bad at times that I was kind of overshadowing people. But no, then there is Tony did a really good job of just kind of like throwing in those little, you know, quips and, you know, putting his funny voices on things and stuff like that. So no, I had a great job with that. I thought that was a good time.
Yeah, I think it was a two-way street. Like I feel like Tony like really came to life, like also like with your character. Like the two of you like definitely, you know, and like Tony's like a great player. But there were like definitely like moments where like I could see like a bit more like life in his eyes, where it was almost like this guy gets me, you know, like just like the way like you guys interacted with each other. And like those moments where it's just like unfiltered joy almost, you know, like I was thinking about nothing else but being in outer space with you guys, you know, and like having those laughs. And so it's two like totally different things that both spark joy. Yeah, that's like kind of how I would think about them.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat because as I think you and I talked first, like 2 or 3 years ago at this point, when I first kind of approached you about doing the narration, I originally started recording it just to my phone, just to kind of see how my voice would sound and see if I could actually do the narration. Because I know a lot of authors will do their own audiobooks, and you know, I guess it's kind of cool if you could pull that off, but I hate the way my voice sounds recorded. And my problem is if I was doing it by myself and I was the one recording, I was the one editing, and then I was going to be the one that would call it done to upload to have other people listen to, I would never upload it because I would constantly go back and forth and I would just keep editing. I would keep re-recording and I would just go down this insane spiral to insanity where I would just never actually think it was good enough for other people to listen to, and I would never finish it. Whereas doing a live recording like this, where, you know, like we got a little bullet list of what we're going to talk about, but we didn't script it. I'm not going to go back and edit it because I'm like, I didn't adhere to a script and I didn't make it the exact way that you and I wanted it to be for our recording. And you just need to like let go and just have fun with it. So I like doing the live recordings too, because then you can kind of just let things organically develop, see where they go, and as long as you're having fun with it, like who cares? So yeah, I commend you for having the ability to just sit there by yourself in your room and narrate this book and edit it and call it good, because it's something I would never be able to do. I would never get to the point where I would submit a finished book for people to listen to. I can't get to that point. I'm like my own worst critic. But yeah, whenever you do stuff live on the fly, you sort of just, you commit to it and just say, it is what it is. Whatever comes out of this, it's gonna be fun, and we're gonna have a good time, and we're gonna record it, and people are gonna like it. They're gonna have a good time. So yeah, I think I like the live recording stuff too. But at the same time, I've been doing more videos to YouTube to talk about my books and robotic stuff that I've been doing, but they're 10 minutes long at most. And I try not to script it. I try just to do bulleted lists so that I don't get hung up on accuracy. As long as I get the content across and it sounds okay, then I'm happy with it. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm glad that you're a better narrator than I am, and that you're bringing this book to life. So I obviously appreciate your efforts.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. Do you have anything else you want to tell the listeners?
I guess just that that's again kind of like reiterate, storytelling is super important. It's also very important, like the creation of art is important. So look to your local bookstores, local authors, all of that, because if you don't, then people are just going to stop doing it. And they're not going to get out there, and you're going to really miss out on some truly spectacular things. So
yeah, I think this past year has really proven it, that you have a bunch of people all just kind of sitting in their house by themselves. It's impressive to see what I've been seeing on YouTube and people putting out on TikTok and stuff like that. And people are getting really creative with, written words, performances, singing, stuff like that. So yeah, it's almost been a blessing and a curse having people trapped inside their house for a long time, trying to come up with ways to entertain themselves and share it with people. But yeah, I mean, I know the scene from at least the indie author perspective. I travel around, I talk books with people that you'll never see on the front end rack of a Barnes and Noble. We're not talking about the Tom Clancy's and the John Grishams and stuff like that, but there's just all these people out there that have stories to tell, and they want to share them with the world. So yeah, that's why I always try to patronize independent bookstores when I can, and try out those new books that maybe you wouldn't have bought otherwise. So yeah, I completely agree, and that's a great point to make. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, Conrad. I appreciate it. And everybody go on to YouTube and check out the Deej Time channel. Conrad and his team are putting out great videos, a lot of fun, and his voice is bringing Trigby and Liam and the rest of my characters to life via audiobooks. So yeah, check out Washington's Dragon Hunter later this summer. If you haven't listened to The Dragon and the Whites yet, it's obviously up on Audible right now. I believe Apple and Google Play as well. And yeah, we look forward to sharing more fun dragon shenanigans with you guys in the future. So this is me, Tim Baird, signing off, and thank you, Conrad, for joining me today.
thanks for having me.
All right, thanks. We'll see you guys later. Bye.